The morning dew sparkled like stardust on the leaves of Theron Nash's prized Centaurian roses. His weathered hands worked the soil with practiced care, each movement precise and gentle. 10 years had passed since he'd last held a weapon, since he'd traded the cold metal of a plasma rifle for the warm earth of his interstellar botanical sanctuary. The garden stretched for acres across the terraformed plains of Nova Eden, a testament to his dedication to peace. Exotic plants from 100 worlds thrived under his attention, their colors painting the landscape in impossible hues. Visiting diplomats often remarked how a former military commander could nurture such delicate life, but Theron knew the truth: every seed planted was a promise to never return to war. His peace shattered with the sound of an approaching ship. The vessel's sleek design marked it as celestial, a race known for their bioluminescent skin and strictly nonviolent culture. It landed with uncharacteristic urgency, scorching his prized Jovian orchids. The ship's hatch opened with a hiss, releasing a cloud of iridescent mist. A figure emerged, tall, graceful, her skin emitting waves of distressed purple light. Theron recognized her kind but had never seen a celestial in such obvious distress. "Commander Nash," she called out, her voice carrying the musical qualities of her species despite its urgent tone. "I am Lasara of the Harmony Settlement. We need your help." Theron's hands tightened around his gardening tools. "I'm not a commander anymore. Haven't been for a long time." "The Crimson Dawn," Lasara continued, her luminescence pulsing with fear. "They're systematically targeting peaceful settlements." Harmony was. Her light dimmed momentarily. "We were a research station. Scientific development. Medical advancement. They destroyed everything." "There are proper channels," Theron replied, turning back to his gardens. "The Galactic Council are compromised," Lasara interrupted. "The attack was too precise, too well coordinated. Someone high up sanctioned it." She moved closer, her natural glow illuminating the lines of care on Theron's face. "We found evidence. The Crimson Dawn isn't just attacking peaceful settlements, they're eliminating any species showing signs of evolving beyond their designated roles. Especially those learning to defend themselves." Theron's hands stilled in the soil. "Why come to me?" "Because you understand both worlds," Lasara's light shifted to a deeper blue. "You've walked the path of war and peace. You know when one must give way to the other." Before Theron could respond, his garden's warning system activated. Multiple ships entered the atmosphere, their energy signatures matching Crimson Dawn vessels. Lasara's light pulsed with alarm. "They followed me," she whispered. "I led them right to you." Theron stood slowly, decades of combat training reasserting themselves despite years of disuse. His eyes scanned the horizon, calculating angles, assessing threats. Behind his garden shed, beneath years of peaceful growth, lay a bunker containing everything he'd sworn to leave behind. "How many survived from Harmony?" he asked, his voice taking on the edge of command. 300, Lasara replied. "Mostly scientists, healers, children. We're scattered across refugee camps in the outer rim." The first explosive struck the far edge of his garden, incinerating a patch of rare Plutonian snowflowers. Theron watched 10 years of peaceful work begin to burn, and something inside him shifted. "Get to the bunker," he ordered, already moving. "My equipment's there." "And Lasara?" She turned, her skin now a pale yellow of uncertainty. "I'm going to need you to tell me everything about these attacks. Every detail." As they raced across the garden, plasma fire raining down around them, Theron felt the weight of his broken promise. But watching his sanctuary burn, he realized some promises must be broken to protect the very peace they represent. In the bunker, as he unsealed his combat armor for the first time in a decade, Lasara watched with a mixture of hope and sadness. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I know what this means for you." Theron activated his armor's systems, the neural interface connecting with a familiar hum. "Don't be," he replied, checking his weapons. "Sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to remember how to fight." Above them, the garden continued to burn, but in its ashes, something new was taking root, a determination that would shake the very foundations of galactic society. The refugee camp on Proxima 3 sprawled across the desert like a wounded creature. Theron watched from the ridge as hundreds of displaced beings moved through the makeshift streets, their bioluminescent skin casting eerie shadows in the dying light. 3 weeks had passed since the attack on his garden, and each day brought new evidence of the Crimson Dawn's systematic crusade against peaceful species. Lasara appeared beside him, her natural glow dimmed to match the twilight. "The latest report came in," she said softly. 2 more settlements targeted in the outer rim. Both research facilities studying evolutionary adaptation. Theron's armor systems highlighted movement patterns in the camp below. His tactical analysis showed gaps in the security perimeter, gaps that made his combat-trained mind uneasy. "They're not just attacking randomly," he observed. "They're following a pattern." "Commander Nash." A voice called from behind them. Naira, a former warrior from the Styraxian system, approached with the fluid grace of her predatory species. Her iridescent scales shifted colors as she moved, a trait that made her kind exceptional scouts. "The weapon shipment arrived, but there's a problem." In the command tent, spread across a holographic display, lay the manifest of their latest supply run. Theron studied the numbers with growing concern. "Not enough," he muttered. "Barely enough to arm a quarter of the volunteers." "That's not the real problem," Naira's scales flickered to a deep red of frustration. "Most of these people have never held a weapon. The Celestials, the Harmonious, the Eternal, they're all pacifist species. Teaching them to fight." She trailed off, her scales shifting to uncertain purple. "Goes against everything they believe in," Lasara finished, her light pulsing with emotion. "Everything we believe in." Theron turned to face them both. "Belief won't stop plasma rounds," he said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Belief won't protect your children when the Crimson Dawn comes. We're not teaching them to conquer, we're teaching them to survive." A commotion outside drew their attention. Ren, their diplomatic liaison, burst into the tent, his normally composed features twisted with urgency. "We intercepted a transmission," he announced, activating his data pad. "You need to see this." The holographic display shifted, showing a series of coded messages. As they decoded in real time, Theron's expression hardened. Supply routes, target locations, security protocols, all bearing the signature of high-level Galactic Council authorization. "The corruption goes deeper than we thought," Lasara whispered, her light dimming further. "No," Theron corrected, his tactical systems already analyzing the data patterns. "This isn't corruption. This is policy." He highlighted several recurring phrases in the transmissions. "Look at the language: maintaining genetic purity, preserving natural order, preventing unauthorized evolution." Naira's scales shifted to the deep blue of revelation. "They're afraid," she realized. "Afraid of what happens when peaceful species learn to defend themselves." "Afraid of change," Ren added, his diplomatic training helping him see the bigger picture. "If traditionally peaceful species can learn to fight, what's to stop warrior races from choosing peace?" A distant explosion rocked the camp. Theron's armor systems immediately identified multiple incoming vessels, Crimson Dawn attack ships. They'd found them. "Everyone to their positions," Theron commanded, his voice carrying the authority of his military days. "Naira, get the non-combatants to the emergency shelters. Ren, transmit that data to our secure facilities." Lasara. She met his gaze, her light now pulsing with determined gold. "I'll lead my people," she said firmly. "We've been training for this." As they moved to their positions, Theron watched the Celestials and other peaceful species take up defensive formations. Their movements were uncertain but determined, each one choosing to stand against everything they'd been taught to be. The first wave of attackers hit their perimeter, expecting to find helpless pacifists. Instead, they met organized resistance. Lysara's people used their bioluminescence to create disorienting patterns, while others demonstrated surprisingly effective defensive techniques. In the midst of the battle, Theron spotted a familiar insignia on one of the attack ships, the personal mark of Vex, the cybernetically enhanced leader of the Crimson Dawn. The same mark had been found in the ruins of the Harmony settlement. "You're watching, aren't you?" Theron muttered, targeting another incoming ship. "Watching your perfect order crumble as people choose their own path." Above them, the desert sky burned with weapons fire, but on the ground, something unprecedented was happening. Species who had never raised a hand in violence were standing their ground, protecting their right to choose their own destiny. And in that moment, Theron realized they weren't just fighting against the Crimson Dawn, they were fighting for the right to be more than what others said they should be. Deep within the abandoned mining facility on Centauri Prime, Theron's armor systems tracked multiple heat signatures. The underground complex sprawled like a maze, its tunnels carved through ancient bedrock. Intelligence suggested this was more than just another Crimson Dawn base, it was where they took their specimens. "Security systems are more advanced than expected," Naira whispered, her scales shifting to match the darkness. "Military grade. Someone's been upgrading." Lysara moved silently beside them, her natural glow dimmed to almost nothing. Weeks of combat training had transformed her movement from ethereal grace to lethal precision, though the change clearly troubled her. "The holding cells are 3 levels down," she reported, consulting the stolen facility plans. "If there are survivors from the other settlements, they'll be there." Theron's tactical display highlighted potential patrol routes. Something felt wrong. The patterns were too obvious, too predictable. "Ren," he subvocalized through the secure comm, "status on the perimeter team?" Static answered him. "Comms are being jammed," Naira's scales flashed warning colors. "But that's impossible. Our encryption was compromised," a new voice echoed through the tunnels, accompanied by the heavy footsteps of cybernetic enhancement. "Really, Theron, did you think I wouldn't recognize my old command protocols?" From the shadows emerged a figure more machine than man. Vex's cybernetic components gleamed in the low light, his organic eye fixing on Theron with malicious amusement. "Welcome to evolution's end. We've been expecting you." Lights flooded the tunnel, revealing dozens of Crimson Dawn soldiers surrounding them. But what froze Theron's blood was the sight of Ren standing beside Vex, looking anywhere but at his former companions. "Why?" Lysara's voice carried both hurt and anger, her light pulsing red with betrayal. "Because he understands the necessity of order," Vex answered, his cybernetic arm gesturing expansively. "Show them, Ren. Show them what we're trying to prevent." Ren activated a holographic display, projecting images throughout the tunnel. They showed peaceful species throughout history, moments before their civilizations collapsed. Each of these cultures evolved beyond their designated role, he explained, his diplomatic training making the words sound reasonable. They grew too fast, reached too far, and the result was always the same: chaos, destruction, extinction. "That's not your choice to make," Theron growled, his armor's targeting system identifying weak points in Vex's cybernetic enhancement. "But it is," Vex countered. "The Galactic Council has always understood this. Why do you think they segregate species into roles? Warriors, diplomats, scholars, each with their place, their purpose. Evolution must be guided, controlled, or the result is, well, humans." Naira's scales shifted to battle-ready crimson. "You're experimenting on them. The people you took. Studying them," Vex corrected. "Learning how to prevent unauthorized adaptation. Some species are meant to fight, others to create, others to serve. When they step outside those roles, the fabric of civilization begins to unravel. A scream echoed from the lower levels, carrying the distinct harmonic qualities of a celestial in pain. Lysara's light flared with fury, momentarily blinding the nearby soldiers. In that instant, chaos erupted. Theron's combat systems engaged automatically, years of military experience combining with his armor's enhanced capabilities. He moved through the enemy forces like a storm, each strike precise and devastating. Beside him, Naira became a blur of motion, her scales creating disorienting patterns as she fought. But it was Lysara who proved most surprising. Her people's natural ability to generate light became a weapon, creating brilliant flashes that overloaded cybernetic visual systems. She moved with a fluid grace that combined her species' natural movements with Theron's combat training, beautiful and deadly. "You see?" Vex shouted over the battle, his cybernetic systems sparking as he engaged Theron directly. "This is exactly what we're trying to prevent. A peaceful species learning violence? It's an abomination." Their fight carried them through the facility, past laboratories filled with horrific evidence of Vex studies. Stasis pods contained beings from dozens of species, each showing signs of forced genetic manipulation. "You're not preventing chaos," Theron realized, blocking a cybernetically enhanced strike. "You're afraid of losing control. Afraid of a future where species can choose their own path." A massive explosion rocked the facility. Through the secure comm, still filled with static, came fragments of transmission. The resistance had arrived in force. The peaceful species they'd trained were launching a coordinated attack on evolution's end. Vex laughed, the sound distorted by his cybernetic vocal enhancers. "You've doomed them all, Theron. Once they learn violence, they can never go back. You've destroyed everything they were meant to be." "No," Lysara's voice rang out as she joined their fight, her light now a brilliant corona. "We're becoming what we choose to be. And we choose to be free." The facility's emergency systems activated, warning of critical reactor failure. Someone, likely Ren in a final act of conscience, had initiated the self-destruct sequence. As alerts blared and systems began to overload, Theron made a choice that would reshape the galaxy. Sometimes, he told Vex, targeting a specific weakness in the cyborg's enhancement, the greatest violence is forcing others to remain unchanged. His strike was perfect, disabling Vex's systems without killing him. And sometimes, true peace comes from knowing how to fight, and choosing not to. The orbital defense platform above New Haven trembled as another Crimson Dawn warship emerged from hyperspace. Through the command center's viewing port, Theron watched as the massive vessel joined dozens of others, their weapons primed and ready. 2 months had passed since the revelation at evolution's end, and now the galaxy stood on the brink of unprecedented change. "Fleet status," he commanded, his armor's tactical systems integrating with the station's defense grid. Naira's scales shifted through analysis patterns as she studied the holographic display. 27 resistance ships in position. Another 35 inbound from the outer colonies. Her colors flickered with pride. Most crewed by species who'd never seen combat before last month. "The Council's response?" Theron asked, though he already suspected the answer. Lysara approached, her light dimmed with concern. "They're calling it an illegal insurgency. Claiming we're disrupting the natural order." Her luminescence pulsed with determination. "They've authorized the Crimson Dawn to use whatever means necessary to restore balance." The command center hummed with activity as representatives from dozens of traditionally peaceful species coordinated their forces. Scholars who once studied ancient texts now calculated targeting solutions. Artisans who crafted beauty now engineered shield harmonics. Each being had chosen this path, knowing the cost of their transformation. "Incoming transmission," Naira announced, her scales flashing warning colors. "It's Vex." The cybernetic commander's image appeared above the tactical display, his mechanical components showing signs of recent repair. One last chance, Theron. Stand down your forces, return these species to their proper roles, and we can end this without further bloodshed. You still don't understand, Theron replied, watching as more ships joined their fleet. These people aren't following my orders. They're choosing their own path. Then you've condemned them all, Vex Organic. I narrowed. The Council has authorized the use of the Purifier. The command center fell silent. The Purifier was a weapon of last resort, designed to reset a planet's biosphere. Using it on an inhabited world was unprecedented. You would destroy an entire civilization? Lysara's voice carried both horror and disbelief. To prevent the collapse of all civilization? Vex countered. Yes. Better one world burns than the entire galaxy descends into chaos. The transmission ended, and immediately alarms blared across the station. The Crimson Dawn fleet was moving into attack position. They're targeting the civilian centers first, Naira reported, her scales now battle-red. Trying to force our surrender. Theron studied the tactical display, years of military experience combining with his recent insights. No, he realized. They're trying to prove their point. Show everyone what happens when peaceful species dare to fight back. Then let's show them something else instead. Lysara stepped forward, her light now blazing like a star. She opened a channel to their entire fleet. To all ships, all fighters, this is Lysara of the Celestial Resistance. We've spent generations believing that peace meant acceptance, that harmony required submission. We were wrong. Throughout the command center, beings of all species stopped to listen, their chosen weapons held with newfound purpose. True peace, she continued, her light pulsing with conviction, comes not from the absence of conflict, but from the presence of choice. Today, we choose to fight not because we desire violence, but because we desire the freedom to choose our own destiny. The first shots from the Crimson Dawn fleet lit up space, but the Resistance ships were already moving. Species known for their artistic grace now executed combat maneuvers with fluid precision. Beings who once refused to harm any living thing now targeted enemy weapons with surgical accuracy. Purifier vessel detected, Naira called out. Moving into firing position. Not today, Theron's armor interfaced directly with the station's systems. All ships, execute Operation Starburst. The Resistance fleet moved as one, implementing a strategy that combined their natural talents with their newly learned skills. Celestial ships used their light manipulation technology to create massive distortion fields. Scholar vessels deployed theoretical physics in ways never intended for combat. Artist ships painted the void with energy patterns that confused enemy targeting systems. Impossible, Vex's voice crackled through the calm. These maneuvers, these tactics, are exactly what you feared, Theron completed. Different species bringing their unique perspectives to warfare. Not becoming pure warriors, but becoming something new entirely. The battle raged across New Haven's orbit, a testament to both the horror of war and the beauty of transformation. Each Resistance ship fought not with the cold efficiency of trained soldiers, but with the passion of beings defending their right to choose their own path. As the Purifier vessel moved into its final attack position, Lysara's voice rang out again, "We are not what you tried to make us. We are what we choose to be." And with those words, the Resistance fleet executed their master stroke, a combination of tactics that no single species could have devised alone. The aftermath of the battle for New Haven cast shadows and light across the galaxy. In the rebuilt gardens of his sanctuary, Theron stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session, transmitted live across thousands of worlds. Behind him, representatives of dozens of species, once strictly peaceful, now transformed, waited in disciplined formation. "You've disrupted millennia of careful balance," the council speaker declared, her ancient voice carrying across the garden. These species were designated peaceful for a reason. Their roles were assigned to maintain stability. Roles you enforced through fear and manipulation. Lasara stepped forward, her light a steady, confident glow. The council chambers stirred, a celestial speaking with such authority was unprecedented. Vex, now stripped of most of his cybernetic enhancements, stood in custody nearby. You don't understand what you've done, he warned. A galaxy where every species can choose its path? Where peaceful races can learn combat? It's the end of order itself. No, Theron countered, surveying his garden where weapons training now took place alongside botanical studies. It's the beginning of true balance. Naira's scales shifted through analytical patterns as she presented the evidence recovered from evolution's end. The Crimson Dawn's experiments weren't about preventing chaos, she explained. They were about maintaining control. Suppressing natural growth and adaptation. The garden's holographic systems displayed scenes from across the galaxy, former pacifist species teaching combat techniques infused with their natural grace, warrior races learning the art of diplomacy, scholars applying their knowledge to both creation and protection. You fear a galaxy without designated roles, Theron addressed the council directly. But look at what forced roles have brought us: secret genocides, genetic manipulation, the suppression of natural evolution. The very chaos you claimed to prevent. Lasara moved to stand beside him, her light harmonizing with the garden's natural beauty. We're not abandoning peace, she assured them. We're redefining it. Peace isn't the absence of the ability to fight, it's the wisdom to know when not to. The council chambers erupted in debate, but Theron's attention was drawn to movement at the garden's edge. There, a young celestial child was teaching a warrior species youngster how to nurture a delicate flower, while nearby, a scholar species practiced defensive techniques with fluid precision. Your experiment has already spread too far, Vex observed bitterly. Every peaceful settlement, every designated non-combat species, they're all watching, all learning, all changing. Good, Theron replied, his armor systems powering down as he knelt to tend a damaged plant. Because the real threat to civilization was never change, it was the suppression of natural growth. The council speaker raised her hand for silence. And what guarantee can you offer? What assurance that this transformation won't lead to the very chaos we've worked millennia to prevent? Theron stood, Earth still clinging to his armored hands. The same guarantee that exists in this garden. Life adapts. It grows. Try to control it too strictly, and it withers. Give it the freedom to choose its path, to find its own balance between strength and gentleness, and it thrives. Lasara's light created patterns that danced through the garden, illuminating both the weapons training areas and the carefully tended beds of flowers. We choose to be more than what others designated us to be, she declared. And we choose to defend that right, for ourselves and for others. The council's deliberation lasted days, but the outcome was inevitable. The galaxy had already changed. Across thousands of worlds, species were discovering new aspects of themselves, learning to balance their natural traits with new capabilities. In the end, the council didn't so much grant approval as acknowledge reality. The age of designated roles was over. In its place, a new era began, one where peace came not from imposed limitations, but from the wisdom that true strength lay in having choices and using them wisely. Months later, Theron worked in his garden, now expanded to include training grounds and meditation spaces. Lasara found him tending to a bed of Centaurian roses that had survived the original attack. The latest reports are in, she said, her light creating beautiful patterns among the flowers. 17 more worlds have established combined learning centers. Places where species can study both combat and cultivation, strength and serenity. And the warrior races? Theron asked, though her bright glow already suggested good news. Learning that true power isn't just in the ability to fight, she replied, kneeling beside him to examine a blooming rose. Some of their finest warriors have become our most dedicated teachers of peace. Theron looked out over his transformed sanctuary. Where once he'd tried to forget his warrior past, now he'd found a way to blend both aspects of himself. The garden remained, but now it was more, a place where any species could learn to grow beyond their designated roles. You know, Lysara said softly, her light synchronizing with the sunset, you never did fully retire. Theron smiled, removing his gardening gloves. Maybe that was the point. Not to choose between being a warrior or a gardener, but to understand when to be each. He touched a rose petal gently. Or how to be both. Around them, the garden continued to grow, different species training, learning, and evolving together. And in its soil lay the seeds of a new understanding, that true peace comes not from the absence of strength, but from the wisdom to know how to use it. Beyond the garden's edge, Theron mused, watching the twin suns set on a changed galaxy, there's a whole universe of possibilities. And we're free to choose which ones to grow, Lysara finished, her light merging with the evening's glow, creating something new and beautiful in the space between what was and what could be.